The Witch of Endor, found in 1 Samuel 28, is a tale that's enigmatic and, quite frankly, unsettling. King Saul, once a mighty ruler, is now a trembling mess. His crown is slipping, his nerves are frayed, and the Philistine army is breathing down his neck. In his darkest hour, he decides to do something completely out of character. Consult a medium. Enter the Witch of Endor. A woman whose resume probably reads, "Summons spirits and gives life advice." The prohibitions against mediums and necromancy in the law of Moses are clear and stringent. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Deuteronomy 18:10-11. These laws were designed not only to distinguish Israel from its pagan neighbors, but also to maintain the spiritual purity of God's people. Saul's act of consulting a medium was a profound breach of trust in God's guidance, revealing a deeper spiritual crisis where human solutions were sought in moments of divine silence. Imagine Saul, hooded and skulking through the night. Hoping no one recognizes him, he finds the Witch of Endor and begs her to summon Samuel. The witch, probably thinking, well, this is a first, agrees. Cue one of the most dramatic seances in biblical history. When Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. 1 Samuel 28:5. Fear and desperation led Saul to seek answers from forbidden sources. This story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting fear dictate our actions. It underscores the risks of compromising our values and seeking guidance outside divine instruction, especially in moments of panic. The encounter between Saul and Samuel's spirit is chilling. Samuel's ghost, not one to mince words, essentially tells Saul, "Why do you consult me, now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy?" 1 Samuel 28:16. This supernatural event mirrors Saul's internal chaos and separation from God, showing the dire consequences of his choices. It's a reminder that divine governance and moral boundaries are crucial for maintaining a healthy relationship with God. Context is everything. Samuel, the prophet who had anointed Saul, was dead, leaving Saul without his spiritual advisor. Additionally, Saul had previously expelled all mediums and spiritists from Israel. His decision to seek out a medium now was a dramatic reversal, driven by fear and isolation, as he faced the Philistine threat without divine guidance. Let's take a moment to appreciate the Witch of Endor. Here she is, probably expecting another routine ghostly consultation when Saul shows up in disguise. Realizing it's Saul, the king who outlawed her profession, must have given her quite the "oh, this is going to be a long night" moment. Yet she goes ahead, and Samuel's spirit appears, delivering a message that's both a rebuke and a prophecy. The Witch of Endor's ability to summon Samuel raises questions. Was it her doing, or was it divine intervention? Her role as a medium, against the backdrop of Israel's strict prohibitions on necromancy, suggests a critical intersection between divine providence and human action. This event challenges us to ponder the ethical and theological implications of seeking supernatural guidance outside God's ordained methods. Necromancy was explicitly forbidden in Israelite law. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 19:31. Saul's consultation with the Witch of Endor was a significant breach of faith, highlighting his spiritual decline. Once a promising king, his disobedience and impulsive decisions had set him on a path away from God's favor. This story serves as a warning against forsaking divine guidance for human solutions. The appearance of Samuel's spirit is one of the most haunting elements of this narrative. It raises questions about the nature of life after death and the interaction between the earthly realm and the afterlife. Samuel's message to Saul is both a rebuke and a prophecy, reaffirming Saul's rejection by God and predicting his imminent defeat and death. This underscores the significance of prophetic literature and the impact of Saul's final actions on his legacy. After this encounter, Saul is utterly demoralized and physically weakened, setting the stage for his tragic end. The aftermath of Saul's interaction with the Witch of Endor offers timeless lessons on the dangers of disobedience and the spiritual peril of seeking guidance from forbidden sources. It challenges us to reflect on how we seek spiritual guidance and emphasizes the importance of aligning with divine will and ethical boundaries. Understanding the role of mediums and spiritists in ancient Near Eastern culture helps contextualize Saul's actions and the Bible's prohibitions. Ancient Israel viewed magic and divination in stark contrast to its neighbors, discussing the reasons for strict prohibitions and the societal implications of engaging with such practices. This chapter explores how ancient Israel's perspective on these practices shaped their laws and cultural identity. The woman asked, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Bring up Samuel," he said. 1 Samuel 28:11. The Witch of Endor is one of the Bible's most mysterious figures due to her ability to summon the spirit of Samuel. This event raises questions about the nature of her powers and the source of her abilities. Was she genuinely able to summon Samuel? Or was it a divine intervention allowing Samuel's appearance? This chapter explores her role as a medium within the context of Israel's strict prohibitions against necromancy, suggesting that her participation in the story serves as a critical junction between divine providence and human agency. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 19:31. The practice of necromancy was explicitly forbidden in Israelite law, which makes Saul's act of consulting the Witch of Endor a significant breach of faith. This chapter discusses the reasons behind the prohibition of necromancy, focusing on its implications for Israel's understanding of death, the afterlife, and the nature of God's communication with his people. It contrasts the Israelite worldview with surrounding cultures that engaged in spiritism, emphasizing the theological purity that Israel was expected to maintain. Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord and even consulted a medium for guidance, 1 Chronicles 10:13. Saul's consultation with the Witch of Endor symbolizes the culmination of his spiritual decline. Once a promising king anointed by Samuel, Saul's disobedience and impulsive decisions had already set him on a path away from God's favor. This chapter examines how Saul's turn to a forbidden practice as a last resort highlights his ultimate moral and spiritual failure, serving as a warning against the dangers of forsaking divine guidance for human solutions. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." 1 Samuel 28:12. The appearance of Samuel's spirit is one of the most haunting aspects of this narrative. It raises questions about the nature of life after death and the possibilities of the afterlife's interaction with the earthly realm. This chapter explores various interpretations of Samuel's appearance, whether as a literal return of his spirit sent by God to deliver a final message, or a vision allowed by God to rebuke Saul and fulfill his sovereign will. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David." 1 Samuel 28:15-17. Samuel's message to Saul is both a rebuke and a prophecy. It reaffirms Saul's rejection by God and predicts his imminent defeat and death, which fulfills the prophecy given to Saul earlier in his reign due to his disobedience. This chapter analyzes Samuel's message, focusing on its significance in the context of prophetic literature and its impact on Saul's final actions and legacy. Saul fell full length on the ground, filled with fear, because of Samuel's words. His strength was gone, for he had eaten nothing all that day and all that night. 1 Samuel 28:20. The aftermath of the encounter with the Witch of Endor leaves Saul utterly demoralized and physically weakened, setting the stage for his tragic end on the battlefield the following day. This chapter discusses the immediate consequences of Saul's actions and the broader lessons for Israel regarding obedience, the seeking of divine will, and the dangers of turning to forbidden practices in times of crisis. Put to death any woman who practices magic. Exodus 22:18. Understanding the role of mediums and spiritists in ancient Near Eastern culture helps contextualize Saul's actions and the Bible's prohibitions. This chapter explores how ancient Israel viewed magic and divination in contrast to its neighbors, discussing the reasons for the strict prohibitions and the societal implications of engaging with such practices. The woman said to Saul, "I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth." 1 Samuel 28:13. The Witch of Endor's encounter with what she describes as a ghostly figure raises significant ethical questions about the practice of necromancy. This event, though driven by Saul's request, puts the witch in a position of performing an act explicitly forbidden by God. The ethical implications here extend beyond the immediate act, touching on issues of personal and societal responsibility in adhering to divine commandments. This chapter discusses how the story of the Witch of Endor serves as a narrative on the consequences of ethical compromises, especially when they are justified by necessity or desperation. It challenges the reader to consider the long-term effects of seemingly small or justifiable ethical breaches, especially when they involve spiritual practices or beliefs. Additionally, this story prompts a discussion on the responsibility individuals hold over their spiritual practices and the influence they exert on others through their choices. Saul's decision not only implicated himself, but also involved another, a medium, in his disobedience. This serves as a cautionary reminder of the social dimension of ethical decisions, particularly those concerning spiritual integrity and obedience. So Saul died for his breach of faith. He broke faith with the Lord in that he did not keep the command of the Lord, and also consulted a medium seeking guidance. 1 Chronicles 10:13. The legacy of the Witch of Endor is intertwined with the tragic end of Saul's reign. This narrative, while centered around a specific historical and cultural context, offers timeless lessons on the dangers of disobedience and the spiritual peril of seeking guidance from forbidden sources. This final chapter reflects on how the story of Saul and the Witch of Endor continues to resonate with contemporary audiences, offering insights into the nature of faith, the importance of obedience, and the profound impact of our choices on our spiritual lives. Furthermore, the story serves as a broader allegory about the limits of human power and the sovereignty of divine law. It reinforces the need for humility and adherence to God's guidelines, especially in spiritual matters. The narrative also encourages a reflective attitude towards the supernatural, urging a balanced view that recognizes the presence of spiritual realities while adhering strictly to ethical and divine laws governing such engagements. Lastly, the Witch of Endor's story provides a platform for discussing the complexities of spiritual discernment, the importance of ethical boundaries, and the profound consequences of our spiritual choices. It invites believers and leaders alike to consider carefully how they seek spiritual guidance, emphasizing the need for alignment with divine will and the scriptures. So, what do we make of this? The Witch of Endor's story isn't just an ancient ghost story to be dismissed. It's a profound commentary on the human condition, the consequences of fear and desperation, and the critical need for unwavering faith in divine guidance. It challenges us to consider our own spiritual practices and the sources from which we seek guidance, urging us to remain steadfast in our commitment to God's laws and to seek wisdom and direction from divine, not dubious, sources. Ultimately, the legacy of the Witch of Endor is intertwined with the tragic end of Saul's reign. This narrative, while centered in a specific historical and cultural context, offers timeless lessons on the dangers of disobedience and the spiritual peril of seeking guidance from forbidden sources. It encourages us to reflect on how we seek spiritual guidance and emphasizes the importance of maintaining a direct, obedient relationship with God. In the end, the story of Saul and the Witch of Endor invites us to look beyond the surface and explore the deeper implications of our spiritual decisions. It's a reminder that when fear and desperation take over, we must hold fast to our faith and trust in divine guidance, lest we find ourselves, like Saul, on a path of spiritual decline and separation from God. So the next time you face a seemingly insurmountable challenge, remember Saul's story and take a deep breath and seek guidance from the right source, one that aligns with divine wisdom and eternal truth. And maybe, just maybe, avoid any impromptu seances.